Hi, I'm Lisa Niven Kelly, and today I'm going to teach you some things about the engraver. So here at Beaducation.com, we do a lot with metal stamping, and the engraver is a great addition to that technique. It's not going to replace stamping, but it works really well with it. There's some differences though. For engraving, you don't remove as much metal, so you're not going to get as deep impression as you would with stamping. Also, the engraver takes practice just like stamping, but maybe a little bit more. A steady hand is really necessary for successful engraving. Think of engraving more like sketching. As opposed to stamping where the impressions are very straight lines and very precise, this is a little more fluid, a little more freehand. Your engraving kit comes with a bunch of bits, and they actually last a really long time, but if you do wear them down, we sell replacement bits. I find it best when engraving on metal to actually tape the metal down. I talk about holding it down with your hand, but putting a little double-sided tape under there is super helpful. So before we get started, let's remember a couple of safety things. Safety goggles that protect our eyes, and because we don't want to be breathing in the dust that engraving creates, the metal dust, let's get a dust mask. When you receive your engraver in the mail, this is what it will look like. Everything comes in this nice case, and it's got this cardboard sleeve that's got a lot of information on here for you, as well as a reminder to wear your protective eyewear and maybe a respiratory mask. And these are tools of character. I just want to point that out because it might be time to start a wonderful and creative hobby immediately. So let's do that. All right, let's bust this open, put this aside, and let's see what's inside the box. Whoa. So in your case, you will receive the engraver tool. This is the adapter, the plug here. And you get this nice glass that has all these templates in it for practicing on, and we're going to talk about that in a second. The kit also comes with 6 different grinding bits. One will come in your engraver, and the rest are here. And this nice stand comes out to hold your pieces while you're working. Before you start, you need to decide what bit you're going to use. I've got the one in here, the grinding bit, the 1mm round bit that I'm going to use. But if you wanted to switch it, I'm going to show you how. Let's unplug the tool first, and taking an old pair of chain nose, not your nice jewelry ones, you're just going to grab it and pull it out, just with some muscle. Same goes for putting it back in. There's no release, it's just a nice strong yank. And then this is how you plug it in to this little 3-prong section here. Ugh. Then I'm going to plug it into the wall, and we're ready to rock. What we've done here was just start to practice. You can see some doodles down here and some wordage up here. We wrote with a Sharpie pen first and then went over that with the engraver. So we sort of had a guide, and we're easily able to place where we wanted all our words. What I want to point out about engraving is that it doesn't come out with perfect straight lines. It ends up more looking like you sketched it. So just like with stamping, this takes a little bit of practice to get the feel for it. So you can see here in this alphabet that we've engraved out here between our lines, the ABC is a little bit jumpy, and it gets a little smoother towards the edge. I have found that every time I engrave, I need to practice a little bit first before working on my actual piece. Every time you pick up the engraver, you need to get a feel for how it works. So another question here that you might have is about gauges of metal. You can engrave on any metal, any hardness and any thickness. It only takes out a little bit of layer on the top, so you can engrave on pretty thin stuff as well. It's going to be a little more difficult to engrave on particularly hard metals. But the particular metals that we concentrate on when making jewelry, like copper and sterling and gold filled, work great with this tool. Before we get started, let's talk about how to hold this tool. The nice thing about it being so small is that you can hold it like a pen. When I first picked up the tool, I was working with it like this, with my pointer pressing down on the button as I worked. But after practicing a while, I found it much easier to hold the power button underneath my thumb. That gave me more control with my pointer out here to direct the tool. So in my opinion, it's much easier to hold and work like this. The glass that is included in the kit is for you to practice on. It's going to feel a little different when you move into metal because the glass is so soft, but it's a great way to practice and see sort of how the tool feels. It also comes with some papers on the inside, so if you wanted to try to trace a pattern and follow, like, the outline of this bird, that's what they're for. But let's just play a little bit on this glass. Can sort of get a feel there for how it feels in the glass. And now let's go move into metal. When you first start out with the tool, I suggest you turn it on and just place it against the metal like you're trying to do just a small polka dot, so you can get a feel for what happens with the tool. You can feel that it sort of pulls, and what happened was I wasn't holding this firmly and it kind of moved your metal. So you got to pay attention to all this stuff. Hold your metal down very firmly so that the tool doesn't move it, and then just be aware that, remember, it rotates to the right, so it almost wants to pull that way, so you have to counter that just a little bit, and that's what practice is for. So let's just do a little doodle here. So I've done a little heart spiral here, and because I haven't been practicing with this, I think I was pressing down too hard. It's surprising. You want to press down when you do this, but lighten up a little bit. It seems to flow a little easier. So let me try it again with that in mind. I think that came out a little bit better. So let's do that one more time, nice and close. So you can see my third one's the best here, and I've found that I do need to practice a little bit before moving into, say, my sterling. If I wanted to draw this design on my sterling, I would work on my copper first. Let's talk about just doing plain polka dots with the engraver. I press the tool down and almost pull it back a little bit as I'm doing it, because otherwise you'll get a long dot. It won't be round, it will be more like a little line. So I'm just going to press, but consciously trying to pull it back and not letting it wander with the pull of the tool. Another tip is I find that when I start a design, a letter, or whatever I'm going to be writing here, I like to press the tool down and hold it a little bit before I start with the stroke. It reminds me sort of how it feels to have it in the metal. Before I did that trick, I would start my line and it would be very jumpy because that learning curve was happening as I was moving. So let's try that. To engrave a little deeper, you can go over that design again, but it's not as easy as it sounds. So practice that a little bit. See, I didn't do the best job at staying on that line, but if I came through with 2 or a 3rd or a 4th line to thicken it up, I think it would look nice. So just like stamping, we want to add a little bit of black into the impressions here so that we can see it better. Remember, this is much lighter than stamping, so a lot of that black is going to just buff out. But let me show you what it looks like. I could oxidize this with liver of sulfur or lightly with silver black, but I'm just going to do the cheap and dirty way here with the Sharpie, which works just fine. And I'm going to wipe it away quickly while it's wet, and then with my Pro Polish pad, just buff the rest of it off. So you can see it adds a little dark in there. I have a little more buffing to do to remove that outside shadowing. So you can see here, because we don't go as deep into the metal as stamping does, you don't get as much contrast. When you stamp a letter into metal, it's much deeper, so the black goes down deeper. This is just a little bit lighter. So instead of adding dark to the engraving like we did with the Sharpie pen just now, you can do the opposite, and I really like the way this works up, by starting with an oxidized piece, engraving it out, so removing it, or doing the same here. This is a piece of anodized aluminum. This is a piece of sterling that we completely oxidized and then engraved, which exposed the sterling underneath but left the darkness on top. This is a piece of copper, so let's see what that looks like if we engrave on top of it. I guess I have a thing for spirals. So it exposes the copper underneath. That's an interesting piece there. And then this is anodized aluminum. So this piece here has a pretty pattern on the back, but because it's so dark, it's great when you remove it and then you can expose the silver underneath. I want to show you a trick for using templates as a guide to maybe put like a circle border or something onto your metal. So my metal here I've taped down so it doesn't move. I need it nice and secure. And I'm using nickels here because I need a little bit of height for my template. If I just lay my template flat on the metal, the grinding bit on my engraver actually grinds into the plastic, which is not a good idea or a good smell. So by giving a little bit of height, it's actually going to be the shank that will touch and move around on the template, not the grinding bit. So I'm going to hold this still, and just remember you need to sort of pull the tool against the template as you do it, otherwise it wants to like wander and go into the middle, so let's be aware of that. Got a perfect little circle on there. The other bits that come with the kit are just used for different textures to fill in maybe. On the glass they say they use it for shading or different line thicknesses. So I've got this blue one here and we created this look with this guy. You can fill in or get a thicker line with it.